Right now, we turn to the international scene and welcome John Hanna, Senior Counselor, Foundation for Defense of Democracies. There is trouble in Turkey, a lot of instability going on right now. John Hanna, welcome to the Schilling Show. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me.
I think a lot of us know there's been some changes in Turkey and the way the government is and walking away from some of the secular elements of the government. But tell us about the Turkey AKP, because we don't really understand the distinctions between the parties there.
Yeah, well, the AKP party, Rob, is the dominant party in Turkey. It's been the ruling party on its own for the last 13 years, based in the Muslim Brotherhood originally in Turkey, a conservative, pious, religious party. That did some good things in Turkey originally, led by Prime Minister Erdogan, some economic reforms, a little bit of political reforms, trying to bring Turkey's Kurdish population more into the mainstream of the country's life. But increasingly over time, in his second and third terms as Prime Minister, Erdogan became increasingly authoritarian, dictatorial, taking over the media, taking over businesses, the commanding heights of the economy, attacking the Turkish military, using the judiciary, weakening anybody in Turkish life that might oppose him. And on the international scene, especially since the Arab Spring or Arab Winter began in 2011, trying to exert that Muslim Brotherhood Islamist influence into places like Syria, like Libya, like Egypt, with quite disastrous results. So he's become a very, very problematic figure in both internationally and inside of Turkey itself. So
if that's the case, then the election certainly bore this out. Tell us about the election results from this past weekend.
Yes, well, the elections were amidst all that dark news of the trends in Turkey with Erdogan. It was a bit of bright news. The Turkish electorate came out in large numbers and essentially rebuked Erdogan by defeating the AKP's effort to get another majority in the parliament. They, in fact, wanted a supermajority because they want to undertake dramatic constitutional changes that would have changed Turkey from a parliamentary system to a presidential system. But lo and behold, on Sunday, they actually lost their parliamentary majority. It was a real defeat for Erdogan. They are now going to have to either move to a coalition government with another party, which they haven't had to do for 13 years, or Erdogan is going to have to allow some of the other smaller parties to band together and form their own government. If that can't be done in the next 45 days and nobody can form a government, then we're going to move to new snap elections again over the next 6 months.
What about the markets? The markets were a little unsettled by the elections. Why and to what extent?
Well, I mean, with the Turkish lira, the currency actually dropped to historic lows in the hours and days immediately after the election. I mean, for all their faults, one has to say that Erdogan and the stability of his government over the last 13 years did do some decent things for the Turkish economy. There were some reforms, opened it up. An awful lot of foreign money flowed in, some of it probably problematic money. And I'm not sure everybody knows exactly where some of that money came from to help fund and finance Turkish consumer booms. But all that's beginning to fade as well. But I think the markets are responding to the fact that for the first time in 13 years, the Turkish political scene is experiencing a degree of instability and flux that we haven't seen before. And nobody knows what kind of government is going to emerge over the next month or two.
Finally, in our last minute or so, John Hanna, what does this mean for U.S.-Turkish relations?
Well, it's greater uncertainty. It's I think people are breathing a sigh of relief because Erdogan, as he became increasingly authoritarian and Islamist, was also increasingly, of course, for anti-Americanism, anti-Israel rhetoric inside of Turkey, whipping up that segment of the population. He hasn't been friendly to the U.S. effort to defeat ISIS. Foreign fighters have flowed across the Turkish border. Turkey has not allowed us to use a key NATO base to conduct airstrikes against ISIS in either Syria or Iraq. Whether any of that will change as a result of this election, I think really depends on what kind of government emerges. And right now, we just don't know what that's going to be. So there's a lot of questions still about the impact on U.S. National security interests.
John Hanna, where can we get you online?
We are at www.defenddemocracy.org, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies.
Thank you so much, John Hanna, for joining us today on The Schilling Show.
Thank you, Rob. A real pleasure.